This isn't just another routine update from the palace. At exactly 4:47 p.m. GMT, something unusual happened. The royal social media accounts suddenly went silent. Not a single post or tiny update appeared. The abrupt quiet felt almost unsettling, making you wonder what was happening behind the scenes. There were no cheerful announcements, no polished photos, no subtle hints, just a complete stop. And if there's one thing we've learned, it's that silence from the royal family is never random. When everything goes quiet, it usually means something important is taking shape out of sight. And when Kensington Palace put out a 15-word notice at 5:02 p.m., it sent a wave of unease across the UK. It felt like something serious was about to unfold, and no one was prepared for it. So what exactly is happening behind the scenes? Make sure to drop a 1-inch the comments if you feel moved by this story, or a 0 if you see it differently. Share your thoughts with us, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss what comes next, where we'll break down all the details behind this unfolding situation. Part of it was the crown, part of it was chaos. William carried out his royal duties with flawless precision, shaking hands and attending events, all while wearing a mask that only those closest to him knew was slowly cracking. But every moment spent fulfilling those duties pulled him further from Catherine, and the guilt weighed heavily. Nighttime became the only space they truly had together. In the quiet, they talked about everything except the past, the children, or what might come next. There were long nights of silence and gentle apologies, nights when they whispered the fears they couldn't bring themselves to voice during the day. They spoke about legacy, what Catherine wanted to be remembered for if the worst were to happen, how George should grow up, how to keep Charlotte strong, and how Louis should never forget her laughter. These conversations were unbearably painful, but absolutely necessary. In a world that always expects strength, they had only each other and the frightening unknown ahead. As their private world struggled to stay together, the public's reaction showed just how profoundly one woman had touched an entire nation. Flickering candles appeared outside Kensington Palace. Letters poured in from all corners of the UK. Even Piers Morgan seemed restrained. For the first time, the monarchy wasn't criticized. It was embraced. Because Catherine wasn't just a royal. She was one of us. The country responded not as subjects of a crown, but as people who saw themselves reflected in a woman who had never asked for sympathy. Colorful bouquets lined the palace gates, handwritten notes from children, carefully folded prayers, and teddy bears bearing the words, "Get well soon, Princess." In that moment, Britain's divisions seemed to melt away. Political parties didn't matter. Age didn't matter. Social status didn't matter. Everyone from all walks of life rallied behind Catherine, not for her title or position, but for her strength, her vulnerability, and her unshakable, quietly inspiring grace that touched hearts across the nation. Social media, often a place of criticism and skepticism, transformed into a wave of support. The hashtag #WeLoveYouCatherine spread across platforms. Cancer survivors shared their stories of resilience, while young mothers posted pictures of their own families, saying they couldn't stop thinking about hers. Even those who had never supported the monarchy found themselves lighting candles in her honor. Catherine had risen above her royal role. She had become a symbol of courage and grace in the face of terrifying adversity. For the first time in decades, the British press collectively paused its chase for sensational headlines. Tabloid papers that had once scrutinized every outfit, expression, and whispered word now showed rare restraint. Editors issued strict internal directives. No paparazzi photos, no speculation, no anonymous sources. Journalists who had built their careers on intrusive reporting honored these boundaries. It wasn't just about decency, it was pressure from the public. Readers didn't want scandal, they demanded respect. And so Catherine's privacy became sacred, protected because everyone insisted on it. Donations to cancer charities surged within hours. The Royal Marsden Hospital received so many contributions that its website temporarily crashed. Cancer research centers saw an unprecedented spike in traffic. Women booked screening appointments, and clinics extended their hours. This became known as the Catherine effect, a wave of awareness and action sparked by a deeply personal revelation. What had once been a private battle transformed into a public confrontation with illness and the fragility of life. Children across the UK wrote letters not only to Catherine, but also to George, Charlotte, and Louis. Some children wrote funny stories to make them laugh, while others drew pictures of their families standing alongside the royal children in a show of solidarity. Schools held special assemblies, and teachers used the moment to speak about strength, compassion, and hope. In those classrooms, Catherine's influence reached far beyond the palace walls. She became a living lesson in courage. However, not everyone responded gracefully. Conspiracy theorists quickly appeared, claiming the diagnosis was a cover for a much larger royal crisis. Others whispered about William and Catherine's marriage, spreading baseless accusations. But their noise was drowned out not by palace statements, but by the public's overwhelming support. For the first time, the country didn't focus on scandal. It focused on humanity. Yet even amid this unity, tension grew, because the monarchy had never been built to endure such a loss. Catherine was more than William's wife, she was a pillar of the monarchy. As she gradually stepped back from public life, the carefully crafted image of the royal family after Diana's death began to show cracks. The question no one dared to ask had now become unavoidable. What would happen if she didn't survive? For over a decade, Catherine had been the stabilizing force of the monarchy. She brought dignity to duty, authenticity to tradition, and warmth to an institution in desperate need of renewal. After the chaos of Diana's legacy, the scandals surrounding Prince Andrew, and the rift caused by Harry and Meghan's departure, Catherine stood as a symbol of a monarchy evolving imperfectly, yet compellingly. Without her, the entire facade began to crack. Behind the palace gates, contingency plans were quickly set into motion. What would happen if Catherine couldn't return to her duties? What if this illness wasn't just a temporary pause, but a permanent absence? Senior aides held impromptu meetings, internal documents were quietly updated, and roles that had once belonged to Catherine suddenly became uncertain. Princess Anne, known for her tireless work ethic, began taking on more projects, many that Catherine had previously led. This wasn't about a power struggle, it was a matter of necessity. Someone had to keep the royal machine running. Duchess Sophie, and the shadow of Catherine's presence, began to take shape in the palace's operations. Even Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, previously considered secondary figures, were asked to step up and take on more temporary responsibilities. The crown needed faces, reassurance, and continuity. But nothing, not even the most polished representatives, could replicate Catherine's influence, both with the British public and within the modern monarchy itself. She was a royal who felt approachable, a bridge between tradition and everyday life. Without her, the delicate balance of the monarchy risked faltering dangerously. King Charles faced a double burden that few could truly understand. As king, he was responsible for leading a nation and an institution. As a father-in-law, he watched his son crumble under the weight of fear and helplessness. His recent health struggles had already forced him to confront mortality. Now, seeing Catherine suffer while William carried an unbearable emotional load, Charles once again felt the shadow of Diana's loss. He offered advice, rearranged schedules, and gave William space, but even he knew that if Catherine's condition worsened, it wouldn't be just a personal tragedy. It could shake the very foundations of the monarchy. It would be a structural threat to the monarchy. Then the most painful scenario loomed. What if William became a widower? The question no one dared ask now dominated every private meeting at court. Would he step back from royal duties? Would the children grow up in a fortress of sorrow? Could the public ever accept another woman in Catherine's place? The answers were both vague and unimaginable. Catherine's illness threatened not just her life, it threatened the stability of the family and the monarchy itself. It cut to the very core of an institution built on symbolism, presence, and public belief. Catherine's absence, even if temporary, revealed a stark truth. The monarchy had become dangerously dependent on a single figure to uphold its modern identity. Just as the institution began to wobble under this uncertainty, an unexpected moment arrived. She appeared at Windsor Gardens, wrapped in a scarf, thinner and paler, yet still full of life. The children ran to her side, and the cameras captured the carefully staged scene, reassuring the world that she was still there. But behind her smile, a truth lingered that few dared to voice. This might be her last spring. It was Catherine's first public appearance in weeks, a visit to the Royal Marsden to personally thank the medical team. She walked slowly, yet with poise, and her voice was gentle but resolute. The world saw her again, and in that moment, hope seemed to return. Her message to a children's charity wasn't polished or scripted, but it didn't need to be. The raw vulnerability in her voice spoke far louder than any carefully crafted words ever could. She wasn't the same as before, and everyone could see it. Her health had improved, but only slightly. The treatment was working, the tumors were shrinking, the symptoms stabilizing, but the doctors refused to make long-term promises. Progress existed, but it was fragile, and any improvement could be reversed in an instant, a reality Catherine understood better than anyone. Amid this uncertainty, William began to change. The rigid, formal demeanor that had long defined his public image started to soften, revealing a more human side shaped by fear, love, and resilience. His speeches grew warmer, his interviews more heartfelt. He spoke about struggle, fatherhood, and resilience in a way that made listeners take notice. His focus had shifted no longer about legacy or lineage, but about survival, love, and family. At home, life revolved around small moments rather than milestones. Catherine read to her children whenever she had the strength. Louis insisted she tell stories, even if it meant sitting by her bedside with a blanket and flashlight. Charlotte began collecting pressed flowers, calling them her mom's garden, a small, tender way to hold on to her mother's presence. George became fiercely protective, often quietly sitting beside Catherine while she rested. The palace was no longer a stage, it had become a shield, safeguarding a mother striving to maintain normalcy for her children amid fear. Private conversations grew tense. William and Charles met frequently, not to discuss titles or events, but to plan. What if Catherine's condition worsened? How would they protect the children? Who would take on which responsibilities? These serious discussions were cautious, always tinged with the hope that they would never have to act on them. Because no matter how hopeful they tried to be, fear always lingered in the background. Catherine's rare public appearances revealed her strength to the world, but inside the palace, that strength came at a high cost. Every step she took required careful rest. Every event demanded a period of recovery. And every photograph, no matter how meticulously staged, carried the heavy weight of personal dignity and perseverance. No one dared to speak the full truth aloud, yet hope still flickered, and in such an uncertain and fragile world, that small glimmer became everything. It kept them moving forward, kept them believing, kept them holding together, but it could not erase the reality of the struggle. And when the future of the crown hung by a delicate thread, one final haunting question lingered like a shadow over every carefully composed and smiling photo. This heartbreaking announcement was only the beginning. From that moment on, every whisper about Catherine's health became a reflection of the monarchy's survival. She is the heart of a legacy under strain, the mother of a future king, and the woman who has kept the crown steady. But what would happen if she were gone? That question echoes through the distant halls outside Buckingham Palace, is murmured in political offices, speculated upon in newsrooms, and quietly but deeply feared by the royal family. Catherine is not just an ordinary consort. She is the lifeblood of the modern monarchy, the figure that connects tradition to the world today. Her presence has softened the harsh edges of the crown. Her smile has restored public trust. Her story has made the monarchy feel more human, more relatable to the people. Without her, the institution would face a void that may never be filled. Everything now hinges on her health. Behind the palace walls, this truth cannot be ignored. Every scan, every update from her medical team is not merely personal news, it's a calculation. What can the monarchy endure? What can the public accept? And how long can the illusion of stability last if Catherine completely steps away from public life? For William, the stakes are far higher. If Catherine were to succumb, he wouldn't just lose his wife, he could be forced to shoulder all royal duties alone, raising 3 young children, grieving under constant scrutiny, while still being the public face of an institution that has endured for centuries. It's a role even he may not be able to manage. The palace understands this. Speculation has already begun. Would the public ever accept a new Princess of Wales? Will anyone, even years from now, be able to step into a role so deeply tied to Catherine's image without facing backlash, comparisons, or outright rejection? Right now, the answer is no. There's simply no space in the nation's heart for a replacement, not yet, and perhaps never. Princess Anne and King Charles have stepped in to fill the gap with duty tirelessly and relentlessly. But they represent an older era, trusted, respected, yes, but they do not inspire the same emotional loyalty. Their presence reinforces protocol, but it cannot replicate the connection Catherine has with the public. That still doesn't restore the belief that the future rests solely with Catherine and Catherine alone. Then there's the next generation, George, Charlotte, and Louis. They're too young to fully grasp the weight of their heritage, but old enough to sense the shift. If Catherine were to pass, they would become more than heirs. They would become living reminders of what was lost, symbols of fragile hope in an institution built on continuity and tradition. George, Charlotte, and Louis are more than future heirs, they are living symbols of what has already been lost. Though too young to fully understand the weight of the legacy they will one day inherit, they are already sensing the shift. In that awareness, they embody fragile hope within a monarchy built on longevity. Without Catherine, they will stand as reminders of a past that can never be reclaimed, and the sense of loss will echo for years to come. The childhood of the royal children, once defined by titles and grandeur, will forever be shadowed by the absence of the one person who made them feel truly safe. Catherine's battle is no longer just personal, it's institutional, existential. Her survival matters not only for her family's happiness, but for the monarchy itself. Can the crown maintain its emotional heartbeat without her, when her absence risks turning the kingdom indifferent and its rituals soulless? The royal family has never faced a storm like this, and as Catherine continues to fight, one heartbreaking truth becomes clear. The fairy tale we once knew has ended, and what comes next will be met with judgment. What do you think about Catherine's battle and the profound impact she has had on the monarchy as a whole? We want to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment with a 1 if today's story inspired you, or a 0 if you feel differently. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your perspective in the comments below. Your voice matters, and we love seeing the discussion unfold. We'll be back in the next video to continue diving into untold stories of the royal family, exploring the challenges they face behind palace walls, and uncovering what the future may hold for this enduring yet evolving institution.